I am Kaeldor, and I was supposed to die on that hill. My people, the Vethrani, have a saying: a warrior who falls in enemy territory does not come home. It is not a cruel saying. It is simply the truth of how war works. You fight, you win, or you fall. If you fall, the enemy ends it. There is no other way. We had been told this since we were young. We believed it completely. I believed it completely, right up until the moment I opened my eyes and realized I was still breathing. The battle had gone wrong from the first minute. Our commanders had promised us that the human defensive line would break quickly. They showed us maps and numbers and spoke with great confidence. The humans were tired, they said. The humans were stretched thin. We would move through them like water through sand. I stood with my squad and listened, and believed that too. Because we had always won before, and because believing otherwise was not something warriors were trained to do. But the humans did not break. They held their ground in ways that made no tactical sense to me. Our first push should have scattered them. Instead, they absorbed it and pushed back. Our second push cost us more than expected. By the third, my squad was reduced to 3. By the fourth, it was just me, running forward because stopping felt worse than moving, firing at shapes in the smoke, trying to find the edge of their line. I never found it. What I found instead was a single human soldier crouched behind a collapsed section of wall, reloading his weapon with the focused calm of someone who had done it many times before. He was young. He had the kind of face that belongs somewhere quiet, a kitchen, a garden, somewhere without smoke. We saw each other at the same moment. I charged. He was faster than I expected. He fired. The round caught me at a joint in my chest armor, and the ground came up and took me. My last thought, before the darkness, was simple. So this is how it ends. The Vethrani teach us that when you fall in enemy territory, you do not wake up. I had accepted this. I closed my eyes and let go. Warmth was the first thing I noticed. Not the warmth of a fire, not the hard warmth of a medical unit running emergency protocols. This was soft warmth, the kind that comes from being covered with something, from being somewhere that the cold cannot reach. I lay still for a long time without opening my eyes, because my brain was insisting that warmth of this kind meant I was either dreaming or dead, and I was not ready to find out which. Then I smelled something cooking. That detail was too specific for a dream. I opened my eyes. The ceiling was low and made of wood. The light was the pale yellow of early morning, coming through a window with curtains that moved very slightly with the air. I was lying on something soft, a bed. I would learn later, though it was nothing like what my people sleep on. My armor was gone. My wounds had been wrapped in cloth and held with some kind of adhesive. The wrapping was simple, not elegant, but it was holding. Someone had taken care not to cause more damage while doing it. I was not restrained. I sat up slowly and looked at the room. Small. Warm. There were photographs on the walls. Faces, places, nothing I recognized. There was a coat hanging near the door. There was a small plant on the windowsill that looked like it was surviving mostly out of stubbornness. There were no weapons visible. There were no guards visible. The door was closed but not locked. I sat in the middle of all of this and tried to build a threat assessment from materials that refused to cooperate with the exercise. The door opened. He came in carefully, the same young face from the battlefield, now without the smoke and the fear behind it. He was carrying a bowl of something hot. He set it on the nearest surface, took 2 full steps back, and held his hands out to the sides, open, palms forward. I learned later that this means, I have no weapon. He said several things in his language. I understood none of them. He seemed to understand that I understood none of them, because he stopped talking and sat down on the floor, not in a chair, not behind a table. On the floor, cross-legged, directly, like a person with no particular concern about appearing powerful. He looked at me. I looked at him. This continued for longer than either of us seemed to expect. Then an animal came in through the door. I had read about dogs. They appear in Vethrani xenobiology files as a footnote. Domestic, non-threatening, historically useful to humans for work and companionship. The file did not prepare me for what it actually meant to have one walk directly toward me with no hesitation, sniff my hand for a long moment as if conducting a serious investigation, make some internal decision, and then lie down across my legs. The human said something with an apologetic tone. The dog did not move. I sat there with this animal across my lap and looked at the ceiling, and tried to find some framework in my training that explained what was currently happening to me. I did not find one. The dog's breathing was even and slow. It was entirely comfortable. After some time, I realized that I had stopped looking for the threat and was simply sitting there, which was a new experience. I ate the food. It was not good. The seasoning was wrong for my palate. The texture was too soft. The protein content was clearly calculated for a human body and not mine. But it was warm. I was much hungrier than I had realized. I ate all of it without stopping. The human looked at me the way people look when something they were worried about turns out to be fine. He took the bowl, nodded once, and left. The dog remained. I sat with the dog and tried to understand what was happening. I could not find the angle. In Vethrani strategy, every gesture has a purpose. Every act of apparent kindness from an enemy conceals a function. I looked for the function. I kept not finding it. Eventually I lay back down, because my chest still ached, and the warmth was very strong, and the dog was warm too, and I could not find a reason to do anything else. Days passed. He brought food consistently. He brought water. He brought, on the third day, a small device with audio files on it. His language, spoken slowly, labeled simply. He left it where I could reach it, and did not make any ceremony of the gesture. He was teaching me, without making it an instruction, which is a distinction I had not previously understood was possible. I worked through the files at night. My people do not sleep the way humans do. We rest in shorter cycles, and the long human nights gave me time. By the end of the first week, I could understand roughly a third of what he said. By the middle of the second week, it was closer to half. He learned my name immediately. He could not produce the second consonant cluster correctly. His vocal structure is simply not built for it, but he tried every single time, which matters more than getting it right. I learned his name more slowly. Marcus. It is a short word. I kept second-guessing it, which is strange, because I had learned far more complex things with less difficulty. He showed me photographs sometimes, not as leverage, not to demonstrate that he had things worth threatening. He showed them the way people show things they are glad to have. His mother, his sister, an older dog with white around the muzzle, that looked like the one currently living on my feet. He pointed to each one and told me their names. Then he put the photographs away and went to make food. That was the whole thing. No follow-up, no strategic use of the information. He just wanted to show me. I spent 2 days trying to understand that, and eventually accepted that it was simply what it appeared to be. On the 9th day, when my language ability had improved enough, I asked him directly, "Why did you not kill me?" He was quiet. Not the quiet of a person who is calculating. I know that quiet. It has a specific texture, an alertness underneath the stillness. His was different. It was the quiet of someone who genuinely had not put the answer into words before, and was doing it now for the first time. He said, "I do not know what I would be going home to if I did." I held those words for 3 days. I turned them over carefully. I ran them against every piece of military psychology, every behavioral model, every piece of doctrine I had been trained in. None of it was the right container. He was not describing mercy exactly, and he was not describing strategy, and he was not describing compassion in the way the word is usually used. He was describing something more like an internal account, an awareness that the person who went home from the war and the person who stood on the battlefield were the same person, and that whatever one did, the other would have to carry. The Vethrani Dominion does not teach this. We teach that the warrior self and the civilian self are separate. We teach that what happens in a conflict zone stays in the conflict zone, that the trained mind can partition its experiences cleanly, that this partitioning is a form of strength. We have believed this for hundreds of years. We consider it an evolution. I was beginning to think it might be the opposite. He received a communication call on the 14th day. I was in the other room, but the walls were thin, and I could hear him. His voice changed completely when he answered. The pace of it slowed. The tone dropped. It became soft in a way that his voice never was in any other context. Not soft meaning weak, but soft meaning unguarded. Natural, I think, is the right word. He sounded like a person who was not performing anything for anyone. It was his mother. She was asking if he was eating. He laughed. The laugh was completely real. I had learned by then to tell his real reactions from his performed ones, and this was real all the way through. He said the food was fine. She said something I could not quite catch. He laughed again. He said he would. He knew. He would. He said he loved her, in the particular way humans say that word to family, and ended the call. He stood in the kitchen after, not moving, just standing with his hand on the counter. Not sad, not happy, just full of something. Then he remembered I was there, came to ask if I wanted food, and went back to the kitchen. I sat in the quiet and thought about what I had just seen. He had gone to war carrying that, a mother who asked if he was eating, a laugh that came easily, the ability to be that open-hearted with someone, and he had kept it. He had moved through everything that war does to a person, and had come out the other side still capable of that laugh, that ease, that willingness to stand in his kitchen for a moment and just feel the call before moving on. My people had spent hundreds of years removing exactly that quality from our warriors. We called it weakness. We called the removal progress. I sat there and thought, we may have made a very serious error. The retrieval signal came on the 17th night. I had been monitoring the background frequencies without quite admitting to myself that I was doing it. Old training is very difficult to stop. The signal was coded for my biosignature. Someone had tracked where I fell and was confirming whether Kaldor still existed. Protocol was simple: respond within 4 hours or be classified as compromised. Compromised assets are not recovered. They are sometimes actively addressed, depending on the risk assessment. I held the signaling device and looked at it. Marcus was asleep. I could hear his breathing through the wall. Humans are not quiet sleepers, which is a tactical disadvantage I had pointed out to him once, and which he had responded to by laughing and saying the neighborhood was safe. He had said this as though it were a normal thing to know, a normal thing to be able to rely on. The dog was asleep at his feet. I could hear that too, the smaller sound of it. The signal pulsed. 4 hours. Waiting. I thought about what I was going back to. The debrief. The assessment for ideological compromise, which would find exactly what it was looking for. The reassignment to somewhere my particular compromised state would cause the least disruption, or the post that would resolve the question more permanently. I thought about what Marcus was going back to. The photographs on the wall, his mother, who would ask if he was eating, and mean it. The dog, the plant on the windowsill that refused to give up. I put the device down. I did not respond. The 4 hours passed. I watched them. I became an exile by Vethrani law somewhere in the 3rd hour, quietly, without ceremony. At the end of the 4th, Marcus's dog came in from the bedroom and sat on my feet, because apparently, that was its solution to not being able to sleep. I put my hand on its back. It made a small sound and was still. Marcus appeared 20 minutes later, tired looking, and without saying anything, went to make coffee. He came back with 2 cups. His coffee was not good. I had told him this directly, which he had found funny rather than insulting, which itself said something about him. He handed me 1 cup anyway. We sat in the early dark. We did not speak much. Outside, the light was beginning to change. The Vethrani Dominion believes humans are a lesser species. I know the file. I helped write one of its supplementary sections, once. Smaller, shorter-lived, individually weaker, emotionally inconsistent, in ways that compromise their performance under pressure. The Dominion's conclusion: reactive, inefficient, ultimately limited. A species that succeeded through numbers and stubborn refusal to stop, not through any genuine evolution of capability. I still think some of those observations are accurate, but I have slept under a human roof for 3 weeks. His dog has decided my feet are its personal territory, and I have let it. I have eaten his food and learned his language, and watched him stand in his kitchen after talking to his mother, full of something I do not have a word for in my own language. I have watched him sit on his floor to make me less afraid, without calculating what that cost him, because it did not occur to him to calculate it. He went into a war zone carrying softness like it was standard equipment. He kept it safe through the whole thing. He brought it home. My people spent hundreds of years deciding that was weakness and cutting it out. I am the finest warrior the Dominion produced in my generation. This is a fact, not a boast. My record supports it completely. I do not know, anymore, what it means. I am going to need some time to think about that. I have a cup of bad coffee, a dog on my feet, and what appears to be a considerable amount of quiet ahead of me. That is, I think, enough to start.